What's up everybody, it is Dancam, and I am back with another tutorial. So, you've just finished building your PC or you bought a new PC and you're wondering what the proper steps are after. Well, in this tutorial, I'm gonna walk you through everything that you need to be taking a look at after you successfully built your PC and installed Windows. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get into it. All right, so before we get into the tutorial, there are a few notes I want to go over. So first up, I do tend to speak pretty slowly and I over enunciate. So if you find the video to be too slow, please feel free to use the playback speed adjustment down in the bottom right corner. Next up, this video is assuming that your build was successful. You have Windows installed and you know how to get into your BIOS. But if you're having an issue with your system or the build, please comment down below and I will do my best to help you out. Next up, all of the chapters in this video may not apply to your specific situation or you may know about, so I'll have everything timestamped, so please feel free to change the playback head and go to sections that interest you. Next up, this video is going to be on a Windows 10 machine. I was going to do it on Windows 11, but I found out that as of November of 2022, that 73% of people are still using Windows 10, so which I found to be absolutely crazy. But this is going to be on a Windows 10 machine, so Windows 11 should be very similar. Pretty much all the instructions I go over will apply to Windows 11 except maybe like the taskbar settings. So keep that in mind as you proceed through the video. And then next up, guys, just keep your motherboard manual close because a lot of the instructions I go over may differ with your motherboard. This video is more meant to bring awareness to what you should be doing and what you should be looking out for. So if there's an instruction I go over that's different from yours, just read your motherboard manual. And if you don't have a physical copy of it, all the manufacturers will have a digital copy you can download. So go through that, get familiar with it, and just know how your motherboard works and how the BIOS works and all of the different settings. Next up, if there's anything I missed, please comment down below. I'm gonna keep updating the pinned comment with new information I receive or information I should add or maybe correcting things I said. So comment down below and let me know if there's anything I missed. And then lastly, I'm gonna have a detailed set of instructions for this entire video in the description, and I may do it in the pinned comment, but I'm basically gonna have this whole video listed out with a bunch of comprehensive instructions and links to everything that I recommend down in the description. So when you're done building your PC and you first boot into the BIOS, I'd really pay attention to your CPU temperature. It should stay at a pretty level temp of like 30 to 50 degrees Celsius, depending on what CPU you have and what cooler you have. But if you notice it's slowly climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing, it may indicate an issue. So I would shut the machine down and then I would check your CPU cooler fitment. I would check your thermal paste application. I would check to make sure you use the right accessories for your CPU cooler. If it's a liquid cooler, I would make sure the pump is turning on when you first power up the PC. I would just basically check everything that goes along with that cooler to make sure it's seated properly, because a rising CPU temperature like that usually indicates a problem, and I would fix that before getting into anything else in this video. So now that we're in the BIOS of your new machine, what you're going to want to do is overclock your RAM. So some pre-builds will have it already set to the max, but I would check this anyways. And then obviously if you built your own, it's going to be set to a default speed, usually like 2133 or 2666 megahertz. So we want to get that to your RAM's max. And that setting is called XMP or DOCP, and it's usually the Intel side that refers to it as XMP, and then AMD refers to it as DOCP, but it really depends on the motherboard. So within your BIOS, you're gonna navigate to your memory settings, and then you're gonna wanna make sure it is enabled or set to profile 1. Like I said, each motherboard is different, but you're gonna wanna make sure that is enabled so you're getting the absolute max speed out of your memory. So the next thing we're gonna look at is Resizable Bar, and not a lot of people know about this, but it's free FPS and there's no downside to it. And what it basically does is it opens up the entirety of your GPU for your system. So your system can fully utilize everything that your GPU's got, and it can equate to a couple frames per second up to 20 to 25. And it does require that your motherboard is on the latest BIOS update, and also your GPU is on the latest BIOS update. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna disable CSM support within the BIOS, and then you're also going to enable 4G encoding and enable Resizable Bar. And then once you go into your desktop, you're gonna open NVIDIA Control Panel, and then down in System Information, you're gonna see a little slot that says Resizable Bar, either no or yes. And if it's obviously selected towards yes, that means it's turned on. And if it says no, then you're gonna wanna turn it on, because like I said, it's free FPS. So the next thing you're gonna wanna take a look at is your boot priority. So I don't know your specific situation, whether you're swapping a boot drive over from an old system or adding in a couple new hard drives. You wanna make sure that your system is booting from the correct drive. So within the boot option within your BIOS, you're gonna wanna make sure that, first of all of your drives are being recognized and that the proper drive is the actual boot drive. And if you don't see a new hard drive that you installed, we can go ahead and take care of that later, but you're gonna do that in the desktop in disk management. So moving on, you're gonna wanna make sure that your fan curves are set to your liking. So if your AIO or your case fans are plugged directly into the motherboard, then you're gonna wanna make sure your fan curves are set to your liking. And normally it'll come defaulted to the normal preset. So you don't really have to do this step, but I do recommend either taking a look at it, getting familiar with it. So you can choose either one of the presets that your motherboard gives, like quiet or normal, or high performance, or whatever it may be, or you can set a custom fan curve. So for my case fans, I like a flat curve up until like 55 degrees Celsius or 60, and that's when the curve starts going up. So the fans ramp up as the CPU temperature increases. And then for my AIO, I like to keep mine at a flat curve at kind of a high speed. So like anywhere from like 70% to 80%, because I like my pump to kind of continuously be at a high RPM, but it's up to you on what you want to set it to. So make sure those are set. And if you're using a fan controller, you don't really have to touch any of these settings, but you're going to go ahead and use the program that is associated with your fan controller. And we'll go ahead and we'll tackle that later in the video. So now that you've made all of your BIOS adjustments, you're gonna go ahead and save and exit out of your BIOS, and that will boot you to your desktop. And the first thing that you're gonna wanna do is make sure that everything is updated. So I would go ahead and start it off with Windows. So you can either navigate to the Windows update settings through the settings, or you can go ahead and type check for updates down in the search box in the bottom left. And then once you're there, you're gonna go ahead and update everything that Windows recommends. So go ahead and download and install all of those and let it do its updates, and it'll probably restart for you, but if it doesn't, go ahead and manually restart. So now that we've got Windows up to date, we're gonna go ahead and download and install everything for our motherboard. So this is gonna include chipset drivers, LAN drivers, your audio drivers, and everything that your motherboard offers. And to do this, you're going to Google your specific motherboard. And so mine is a Gigabyte Aorus Elite X570. So you're gonna Google that. And then once you're there, you can find the support page, which has the downloads for everything that you're gonna need. So download everything that is offered in there. And like I said, this is gonna include LAN and Wi-Fi and everything in between, your chipset drivers, and then also your BIOS. And you're gonna wanna make sure that your BIOS is up to the latest version as well, if you didn't have to do it to boot to the desktop, because some boards do require a BIOS update to even boot to the desktop. So update your BIOS if you haven't already, your chipset drivers, and everything that is on that support page. So once those are all downloaded and installed, we're gonna go ahead and make sure that our GPU drivers are up to date as well. And to do this, you're gonna go ahead and Google your specific GPU. So for me, I have an EVGA 3080. So all I'm going to do is type NVIDIA 3080 drivers, and that'll take you to NVIDIA's page. And then you're going to go ahead and download, install all of the drivers, which is usually just one file, but just go ahead and download that one file and then install it on your computer, run through the steps, and then you're probably going to have to restart your computer multiple times. But what you're going to want to do is just make sure that your computer is fully up to date with Windows, all of your motherboard drivers, your GPU drivers, and then basically anything else you can think of. So now that our system is fully up to date with all of our drivers, we're going to go ahead and check our display settings. And to do this, you're going to right click on your desktop and you're going to select display settings. Then at the top, you're going to see rearrange your displays. So you're going to go ahead and drag and drop your displays that you have there to how you have them set up in your room. So basically I have a stacked layout and they're both horizontal or landscape. So I have my smaller monitor on top and then I have my ultra wide on the bottom. And this is basically for Windows to recognize how you have your monitors. And so your mouse tracks properly between your monitors. So if you have some monitors that are in a vertical layout, you can select that monitor that's vertical, and then you can scroll down a little bit and you'll see orientation, and you're going to go ahead and change that to portrait. And then once you change it to portrait, it'll actually flip in that little box right there. And then you're just going to set them up to display how you have them set up. So once you're done with that, you're going to scroll down and you're going to see scale and layout, and you're basically going to change the zoom percentage to what's comfortable for you. So I use a 1440p monitor and I like 100%, but the text may be too small for some people, so you can go ahead and change it to your liking. But if you use like a 4K display, 100% may be really, really small for you. So just go ahead and change that percentage to what looks good for you. And then once we're done with that, we're going to scroll down a little bit to advanced display settings. And this is the one that so many people miss. So what you're going to do is you're going to see a drop down at the top and you're going to have all your monitors. And what you're going to do is click through each of them. And then down below, you're going to see refresh rate. And you're going to want to make sure that the highest refresh rate is selected. So if it's 144 Hertz, you're going to go ahead and select 144 Hertz, or if it's 240, you're going to go ahead and select 240. And you have no idea how many people have these high refresh rate monitors and they have not made the setting adjustments. So they're stuck at the default, which is usually 30 or 60. So make sure you go through each monitor and make sure that the refresh rate is set to the highest one possible. So now we're going to take a look at some power and sleep settings. And to do that, you're going to navigate to your settings again, and you're going to select System, and then you're going to go ahead and select Power and Sleep. And at the top, you're going to go ahead and select when you want your screen to go to sleep and when you want your PC to go to sleep. So once you've changed those settings to what you like, you're going to scroll down and you're going to see additional power settings. And then within here, you're going to see different power plans. So you can change the plan settings within each one. There's a normal or recommended and a high performance. So I would recommend leaving it on high performance. And if you want to check out some of the additional settings, you can do that by clicking change plan settings on the right. So the next set of settings we're going to take a look at is your mouse settings. So within your settings, you're going to go ahead and select devices and then mouse. Then within there, you can set your cursor speed and your scroll speed for your mouse wheel. But if you do have any sort of gaming mouse, I would probably do this within the software that is provided with those peripherals that you have. So I would probably leave those as is unless your mouse doesn't offer that. But once you set those, you're going to go ahead and select additional mouse settings. And then you're going to see a bunch of tabs at the top, and you're going to select pointer options. Then you'll see enhance pointer precision, and you're going to want to make sure this is turned off. This is the most annoying setting in the world. It's basically mouse acceleration. So depending on how you move your mouse, if you move it faster, the mouse will move faster. If you move it slower, the mouse will move slower. So some people may like it, but if you're into FPS games or anything where you need very precise movement with the mouse, I would highly recommend turning this off. And I don't know if Windows has this on by default nowadays, but it used to, and it's one of the dumbest settings. So if you play any kind of FPS games, I would highly recommend turning off enhance pointer precision. So the last Windows settings adjustments I'm going to show you are the taskbar settings. So go ahead and right click on your taskbar at the bottom and then select taskbar settings. And then in here, you can change the orientation of the taskbar, whether it's on the bottom, the left, right, or the top. You can lock your taskbar to any of those positions. You can auto hide it. So if you're not hovering over the taskbar, it'll actually just automatically hide so you can see your full screen. And you can change any settings you want in here to make your taskbar look how you want, because I like a nice and neat and tidy taskbar, as funny as that is to say. And then I'd also recommend turning off the news and interests. So when you first put on Windows, they put on this annoying little icon that shows news and interests and the weather, and I just think that's really annoying. If I want to look up all that stuff, I'll just go to Google and look that stuff up. I kind of just takes up a lot of taskbar room, so I would highly recommend turning off the news and interests as well, and then just go through all those settings and make the taskbar look how you want it to look. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and make sure that Windows is recognizing all of the drives that are connected either through the motherboard or through SATA. And the way we're gonna do that is you can either search for disk management down in your search bar, or you can right click on your start menu and then select disk management. And if you have hard drives that are not initialized, it's gonna go ahead and prompt you right away to initialize those disks. So go ahead and select OK. And then once you do, it's going to show you all of your hard drives, and it'll show you all of the partitions on each drive. So on your boot drive, you're going to see a Windows partition and probably a recovery partition. And then the hard drives that are ready to go are labeled with a blue bar. And then all the ones that have a black bar are not ready to go. So what you're going to do is on the ones with the black bar, you're going to go ahead and right click on that drive, and you're going to select add volume, and then go ahead and go through all of the prompts, and you can rename your drive if you want to. But once you do, it's going to turn blue, and that means it's ready to go. But you also have to make sure that you extend the drive as well, so you're actually getting the full capacity out of the drive, because you might see that one of the partitions isn't taking up all of the space. So to do that, you're just going to go ahead and right click on that drive that is now blue, and you're going to select extend volume. And then once you do, you'll have your full drive ready to use. And then now all your hard drives are recognized by Windows, and you can start storing all of your files on them. So next up is downloading and installing all of the software you're going to need to control the components within your system and around your system. And what I mean by around your system is your mouse or your keyboard or your headset. You're going to want to download the software for those. So like your mouse one, you're going to want to download that. You can set your DPI, your cursor speed. You can set pretty much all of the adjustments within there. And then there's keyboard software for RGB and like actuation points and everything like that. And then within your system, there's software for fans. Say if you have Corsair fans, you're going to want to download IQ, or if you have Lee fans, you're going to want to download L-Connect 3. So you're going to want to download all of the software associated with the components in your system, like fans and your liquid cooler and your GPU. Your GPU probably has a specific program it uses, so I'd go ahead and download that. And when I was talking about earlier with Resizable Bar, that GPU program is used to make sure the VBIOS is up to date so you can enable Resize Bar. So make sure all of those programs are installed and set up, especially the fan ones, because you want to make sure all your fan curves are set properly and all your RGB is to your liking. And then your AIO one, if you have software for that, so you can set the pump speed for that. So make sure all of those are downloaded, installed, and set properly. All right, so now that we've got all of our settings adjustments dialed in, and we've got Windows up to date, and we've got all of our drivers installed, and we've got all of the programs we need installed, it is finally time to test the system to make sure all of our components are working properly. And the way we're going to do that is with benchmarking software and monitoring software, and everything I recommend is going to be linked down in the description. So feel free to check that out and download what you want to check out. But the two that I recommend are OCCT for benchmarking and HWInfo64 for monitoring. And the reason I recommend those is OCCT will run a benchmark on pretty much every single component in your system, while other benchmarking software only specializes in one thing, like Cinebench R23 is only for CPUs, and Heaven 4.0 is only for GPUs, and those are both fantastic, but they're kind of one-trick ponies in that aspect. So I love OCCT for benchmarking software, and HWInfo64 just has all the information you'd ever need about your system. So go ahead and get those downloaded, installed. and then launch them. And then you're going to run a benchmark on each of the components. So start with your CPU, and then you're just going to monitor the temperatures. And for most AMD CPUs, it's around 95 degrees Celsius for thermal throttle, and Intel's around 100 degrees Celsius, but make sure you check your specific CPU because that may not be clear cut for your specific CPU. So please be sure to check. So run that benchmark and watch the temperatures. And if you notice any that are over thermal throttle or are way too high, you may need to check your fan curves or your fan orientations, like the fans on your radiator may be set to intake when they should be set to exhaust, or your CPU cooler may not be fitted properly. I talked about this earlier. It's the first thing you should check is CPU cooler fitment if you notice high idle temperatures. So run this test and make any adjustments you need to make to, your case or your cooling components or whatever it may be. So run that test and make sure your temperatures are proper, and then go ahead and run a GPU temperature. And if you notice those are too high for your liking, you can set your GPU fan curves differently. You can maybe add more fans as intake that go directly towards the GPU or whatever it may be, or you may need to change your case and your case is too restricting. So run that test, and then you're going to want to run memory as well, which will test like OCs, like especially manual OCs. Most XMP and DOCP adjustments are pretty okay, but run the memory test to make sure there are no errors. And then you're going to run the PSU test to make sure that your power supply has no issues and it can properly power your entire system. So run all those tests and then make sure everything is running proper, and then make adjustments if you need to. All right, dudes, now that we've fully updated the system and changed all of our settings to our preferences and fully tested our system, it is now time to download all of the programs that we're going to be using. And I assume you built your PC to game on, so I would recommend downloading all of the download agents, and the first one being Steam, and then there's Epic Games and Origin and Blizzard, and there are a couple other download agents that are used for downloading and playing games through. So I would get those downloaded. And if you want to see a complete list of programs that I recommend, I would check down in the description. But just as a starter, I'd recommend going to Steam and downloading Wallpaper Engine. And there's thousands and thousands of static and dynamic wallpapers you can download. And like this one you see behind me, it actually is a moving wallpaper, and I love this one because it matches my setup. And then if you want to capture your screen, I would recommend using the program OBS, but there are thousands of programs out there, and I'll list out my favorite ones down in the description. So get all those downloaded, guys, and you're pretty much ready to game, but there is one more setting that I want to talk about. So after you get all of the programs you want downloaded and installed, the last setting I'm going to have you take a look at is your startup applications. So go back into your Windows settings, and then you're going to choose apps, and then at the bottom you're going to see startup apps. So I would go through this entire list and then choose which programs you want to open when you first boot up your computer. So you're basically telling Windows which programs you specifically want to open when you're starting up your PC. And a lot of them have a high impact on your system, so it'll make your system boot really slow. And there's just a lot of apps that you don't need to open when you first run your computer. So like, I don't need Adobe to open, and Steam and Epic and Origin all to open when I first turn on the computer. So you really want to limit which ones you actually need when you launch a computer, because at any rate, you can just go into those programs and launch them once you're at the desktop. So go through the startup apps and choose which apps you want to load when you first boot up the computer. That's going to do it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And like I said at the beginning, if there's anything I missed, please comment down below. Or if you have any questions, please let me know. Drop a like if you found this video informative. And if you like content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel. So once again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see y'all in the next video.